Hello everyone. Today we are going to cover the concept of date picker in Android. So we are trying to do something like what we can see over here on the screen. We have over here a date picker spinner, like which is there in the spinner mode. So I'm selecting a date over here, and when I click the button over here which says select date, whatever the date I have selected, it should be displayed over here. Post this, I'll be going to the next activity, and we have one more way in which we can use like the date picker dialog in our applications. So when I'm clicking over here on the select date, that time this particular date picker dialog should be visible, whatever is the value that I'm trying to select, and when I click on OK, the date should be displayed over here. So these are like some of the multiple ways in which we are trying to use a date picker dialog over here. So let us see how we can go ahead and code this. So I'm starting with a new project. The first thing that I'm going to do over here is I'm going to create one more activity. So this is my existing activity. I'm going to create one more activity over here, so that the other date picker dialog button which we had seen, we can do it in the next activity. So to create a next activity, I'm going to right click over here and select Java class. You can give whatever name you want. So I'm calling this as second activity. We need to have our onCreate method over here, so I'm just going to copy paste this as it is and make few changes. Extends app compat activity. For the second activity, I'll also require a XML resource layout resource file. So I'm creating a layout resource file. I'll be calling this as second activity. Okay. I'll give my second activity a ID over here. So I'll just call this as second. And we'll make required changes over here in our Java file of the second activity.java. So I'll be calling this as second activity. So this part will be basically linking my set content view as this XML file now. And over here also, what is the ID that we gave over here in our second XML file? So that was second. So I'll be selecting that. So this is the ID that we have given over here. I'm setting it to this ID. So we are set up with the basic things. One more thing that we wanted over here is we wanted a button at the end. So I'm just taking out this hello world which has come by default. I'm dragging a button over here, and I'm just setting its constraint to with this below screen. So for this particular button, I'm going to have few attributes. I'm going to call this as button next activity. You can make the changes from from the code as well. Okay, so here it is. This is button next activity. The text I want is go to the next activity. And I think we are set to go with this button part. Okay, now what I want is whenever someone is clicking on this particular button, they should be able to go to this second activity. So the first thing that we'll have to do over here is I'll have to register this activity in Android manifest file. So I'm going to call this as second activity. Coming back over here, we can just rebuild the project. This particular error will go away. So what I want is when someone is going to click this particular button of go to the next activity, they should be redirected to the second activity. So for that, whatever the coding is there for this button is going to come in the main activity, since this is part of activity main.xml. So for that, I'm going to go over here. Anytime I have any component XML any component, so here if I want to use a button, what is the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create the variable for button. So I'm going to call this as button, and I'm going to call it as button next activity. Import the class for button, so it will be imported over here as import android.widget.button. What is the next thing that I want is on click of button something should happen. First of all, I'll have to give the reference. So I have declared this variable in my Java file, but I also need to give what is its reference in the XML file. Okay, otherwise how do we know that which particular button was clicked? So that we can do with the help of the ID that we are giving to the button. What is the ID that we have given? Button next activity. So over here I'm going to write this over here as find view by ID. I'm going to write this as r.id dot, and whatever is the name that we have given, so we have called this as button next activity. Typecast it. Then what I want is that on click of button someone should be going to the next activity. So I'm going to use over here set on click listener, new space view dot on click listener. Okay, and our method for clicking the button is all set. So here what I want is that when someone is clicking the button, they should go to the next activity. How is that possible? So for that we are going to use the concept of intents. So I'm going to write over here intent I is equal to, okay, since it's not imported, import the class. So we will be having this package imported over here, is equal to new intent. Now this requires two input parameters. What is the current context and what is your class? So basically what is your current activity and what is your target activity? So my current activity that we are in, that is main activity dot this. What is the target activity, or where do I want the intent, like from this page where do I want to go to? So I want to go to the second activity, so I'll be writing over here this as second activity dot class. After this, start activity I. So with this our intent will be started. Okay, so now we are all set with, if someone is clicking over here on this button, on this particular button, they should be going to the next activity. Okay, now this part is done. Now we'll be coming to our date picker. So over here, first of all, what I want is a date picker. I'll again go over here in my XML code. I'll write over here a date picker, the date picker tag, how I want it. So I want it to be using the wrap content. I'll be giving it some padding. So I'm going to give it padding as say 40 dp. So this 40 dp, it will be giving the padding from all the sides. Let us give this an ID so that we can use this reference in the Java. So I'm just going to simply call it as say pick date. Okay, and okay, so that's done. Now we still have this error, that's because of the constraints. So let us set the constraints. Okay, before this, what I want is how you can see over here, this is in the calendar mode, but if you all remember previously when we saw while running the app how it was in the spinner mode. So how do we get it in the spinner mode? So for that we would be going back to our XML code, and here we are going to write over here as date picker mode, yeah, this option date picker mode, and we are going to call it as spinner. So if you come back over here, see now we have the spinner as well as a calendar which is visible, but I only want the spinner to be visible over here. So I'm going to write over here as calendar view shown false. So now if you can see, we only have for the spinner which is visible. We'll give our constraints over here. So we have given the constraints. So our date picker is all set. Now what I want is when someone is like selecting any of, like they are spinning over here and they are clicking on the button, then the date should be visible somewhere. So for this, what I'll require is a button that whenever someone is selecting the date, and a text view so that whatever is the selected date, that will be visible over here. So here I'm going to add a text view and a button. So I'll just drag and drop a text view over here first of all. Okay, and the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop a button over here. Now what we can do is to easily set the constraints over here, I'm going to just select all of them together. Okay, I'm going to go over here for alignment, and for alignment I'm going to select align them horizontally. So my horizontal constraints are set. Then I'm going to right click over here. I'm going to say chains, create a vertical chain. So a vertical chain has been created. Okay, so our constraints are all set over here. Now for this button, I'm going to go over here again in my coding. This is easier. So I'm going to say button, and this is going to be button select date. Over the button, I'm going to write over here the text property as select date. Okay. Okay, this has been changed to button select. Okay, that's the error what it was. Even over here this was button 2, now what it is, button selected. Yeah, so we are done with this. Text view is done. We can just call this as text view show date. So we might be getting some error again over here in the constraints, so we can just replace that with the new name, that is text view show date, and the error will be gone. Here also text view show date. Yeah, we are all set with this. Now if you can see over here, yeah, so we have our text view and all these things. So the text view, right now there is no need for it to be visible, right? So we don't require any text property over here right now. We just know it is there. Okay, so right now see it's not visible. Whenever someone is going to click on select date, only then the date will be displayed over here. Okay. So this is how our UI would be looking like. Let us go back to our main activity. Now here, what is the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to initialize the date picker and the new button that we have created. So the new button that we have created, that is to select date. So we are going to give the Java XML reference over here as well. So we are going to write over here find view by ID, r.id dot button select date, typecast it. What is the other thing that we have created over here? So we have even let us see. Okay, now what is the next thing that we have created over here is a text view. So we'll define the text view as well. So text view, and we'll call this as show date. Again give this XML reference over here. So that is equal to find view by ID, r.id dot text view show date, and we'll typecast it. So what is the typecasting over here? That is the text view. Okay, so we are done till here. What is another thing that we have used over here in our UI? So that is this date picker. So we need to initialize that as well. So I'm initializing that. So that is date picker. Okay, give its reference, XML reference as well. So find view by ID, r.id dot pick date. That's the name what I had given in my XML, and again we would be typecasting it. That's it. So we are ready with all our initializations, our references. We have one button set. Now we need to set the next button. What is the next button that we need to set? So that is button dot to select dot set on click listener. Again new space view dot on click listener. Okay. Now what I want over here to happen is that whatever is a date that is getting selected in this spinner, that should be selected and it should be set on the text view. How we can do that? So whatever is the date that we are going to select, let us first store it in a string value. Okay. And then we can just pass that particular string to set as set text. Okay. So here let us have a string. So I'm going to call this as string date value is equal to. So how do we go up ahead with it? So what is a reference variable that we have given for our date picker? That is date picker. Now by default this date picker has certain methods. So the first thing is that I want to get what is today's day. So like today's date, so it is 15th of August. So I'll just say dot get day of the month. So that will be giving me 15th plus. Usually how do you have slashes in between, right? So I'm going to use a slash plus the next thing that I want is what is the month. So get the month. Now usually with month what happens is the month value, it is starting over here for date picker from 0. So if I have January, it will be displayed as 0. Feb will be displayed as 1. So that is not how it should be, right? For January it should be 1, for February it should be 2. So for that particular purpose, what we do over here is get month plus 1. Okay. Then again I want a slash in between. Oh, sorry. Date picker dot get month plus 1. Again a slash. Then after that what I want is year to be displayed. So I'm going to use date picker dot get year. So we are all ready with our string now. I'll just check the error. Oh, I added an extra bracket here. Okay. So this is done. Okay. Now what I want is whatever is the date value that we are getting, I want to set it on the text view. So how we can do that is, what is the name of the text view that we have given over here? Text view dot show date dot, the property is set text, and what do I want to set over here? The date value. So this particular value will be set. So that's it. So now if you try to run this code or this code, whatever you want, so I'll just run this code. Yeah, the Gradle building might take some time. It's launching on the device. So our app is running over here. Just make it a little bigger. So if I try to spin this, okay, and say I'm clicking on select date, then whatever is the date that I've selected, I'm getting it over here in the text view. So whatever we have done, it's working properly. Now what we want is when I click over here and go to the next activity, yeah, we are able to go to the next activity as well. We have given the intents. Now in this next activity, we would be using something called as the date picker dialog and see how it works. So I'll go now to my second activity .java. The XML file over here right now it is completely blank. So what I want over here is I want a text view. So I'm going to use a text view over here. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to increase its text size. So I'm going to go over here for text size. and I'm going to make it at least 34 sp. Okay. We are going to give few more properties for this, so I'll just do that from the coding view. I'm going to call this as text view show. So this is selecting the date as well as showing it. So select and show date. Then I don't want any text to be displayed over here, so I'm just taking this property out. I'm using the hint property, which says select date, and then we'll give our constraints over here. So I'm giving my constraints. So I've given my constraints over here. It's coming over here. I can give the constraint from below as well. Okay. Now what I want is whenever someone is clicking over here on this text view, that time the date picker dialog should be loaded. So for that I'll go in my Java file. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize my text view. So I'm going to call it as text view. Text view select show date. Give its reference, XML reference. So the XML reference for this is find view by id r.id dot text view select and show date, and then I'm going to typecast it. Okay. We are done with this. Then what is the next thing that we are going to do is I require a date picker dialog over here. So I'm going to use a date picker dialog. I'm going to call it simply as date picker dialog. Now what I want is whenever someone is going to click on this this particular text view, that time that date picker dialog has to load. So I'm going to have an on click listener on this particular text view now. So I'm going to say set on click listener new space view dot on click listener. So whatever is our coding part, now we are going to write it over here. For this, first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a calendar is equal to and I'm going to get a calendar instance. So get instance of calendar. Then I want to display, like I want to fetch the year, month and day of the month from this calendar. So I'm going to do it in this way. So I'm going to say call this as cal year int calendar month and int calendar day. Okay. Now let us fetch the values. So how I'm going to fetch the values, that is like this: c dot get calendar dot year. Then I'm going to go for calendar. Oh, sorry. I'm going to say over here is equal to c dot get calendar dot month, and here I'm going to say c dot get again calendar dot day of the month. Okay, so now I have all my three important things over here. Now what I want is that someone should be able to select the date from that date picker dialog as well. So I'm going to use over here the date picker dialog is equal to new date picker dialog. Inside this, now what it requires is the first parameter. If you can see, it requires a context. So what is a context? So this part, it requires a context, it requires a resource id, it requires the on date set listener, it requires, sorry, this one we are using int year, int month and int day of the month. Okay, so we are going to provide this part context, that is main activity dot this. We are going to provide it with on date set listener, year, month and day of the month. So now from the first thing, that what is the context that we are in, So we are in second activity right now. So I'm going to call this as second activity dot this. Then what does it require? The next thing, it requires date listener. So I'm going to say new space date picker dialog dot on date list set date listener. Okay, so if you can see over here, we got an error because it required few more parameters. What was that? So comma, and it required int year, month and day of month. From where can we get this year, month and day of month? So we already have extracted this from the calendar. So I'll be saying in the same order we need to write it. So calendar year, then this calendar month, and then calendar day, semicolon. So we have provided it with all the parameters. Now inside this, what I want is, I just want to set whatever is this date value that we are getting. I want to set it that this particular to this text view which we have created over here. Okay, for this text view. So how do we do that? So we are going to say what is the so first of all, what we can do is we can extract it in a string. So I'll again say string, and I'll call it as date value is equal to, what is the date value? How do we get it over here? So for that, what we can do is simply see, we are getting it from year itself. So we have day of the month, we have month, and we have the year. So I'm just going to write over here day of the month plus so these are the input parameters for the date picker dialogs. From there only we can get it. Then what is the next thing that we want? We want the month plus, we'll be giving a slash since the slash is there between the dates, plus what do we want is the year. That's it. Then the same thing, now I want to set it on this text view. So what is the text view name that we have given? That is text view select and show date. So I'll say text view select and show date dot set text, and what do I want to set the text as? The date value. That's it. So we are done with our this code, and after this, now we have made the date picker dialog and everything, but we also need to show it, right? So how do you show? Usually a toast message, you have to do dot show. So here also you'll have to use dot show method. So after this, we'll be writing over here date picker dialog dot show, and now we are all set to go. So I'll run this code. It's launching on the devices. Our install is finished. The app is loading. So from this date spinner, as we had seen it earlier, I'm able to select a date. It's we can view it in the text view. I go to the next activity. I can click over here on the select date text view, and the date picker dialog loads. I can select a date. I can say OK, and the date will be displayed here. So this was all about the date picker view in Android. Thank you so much. We would be meeting again in the next session.